This is Ranger Kidwell Ross, editor of WorldSweeper.com and the director of the World Sweeping Association. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ignacio McVeach. He is the manager of technology development for the New Jersey Marine Terminals of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, which encompasses a lot of area, as you're going to find out, and facilities. And
Correct.
he will be telling us about the trial that they just completed for the Trombia autonomous sweeper. And I think that with that, I'll just say, Ignacio, could you tell us what we need to know?
Ranger, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you so much for your time. We just, as you mentioned, we just completed the pilot for the Trombia EV street sweeper. I guess I'll start out telling you what I've learned, and hopefully maybe you could give me you can ask me some questions, so kind of lead the discussion. But typically, what we were trying to do is solve a problem. Our conventional sweeper, the first one we had, broke down because the driver drove over barbed wire, and we were never able to fix that again. Right, the barbed wire was all in the machine, all in the machinery, all in the equipment and stuff. So that thing is dead. Right. So we had to go out and purchase another one. Well, we don't purchase them; we lease them. I was thinking there has to be a better way, right? Especially since we also have a mandate to reduce our carbon footprint. So that it sounded like the perfect time to kind of see what's in the market in terms of autonomous vehicles, but also to look to see if there's anything electric out there. There were less than a handful of folks that were doing autonomous street sweepers, but not any at the time were doing electric. So Trombia, I found, which is a Finn company, I found, reached out to them. We talked. Actually, I was working on this procurement since August of last year to get those guys here. And the reason it took so long is because part of their supply chain was disrupted when the Ukraine war started, right? So that led to some issues with the service station, which is part of that entire package. So to make a long story short, we finally got them out here. They spent 3 weeks with me. 2 weeks really was part of the testing phase. The first week was really just setting up and kind of mapping things and doing what they do just to run the pilot. So we had what they call 10 sweeping days, which is 2 weeks, where we had 3 use cases. One use case was a large lot actually directly across the street from our office, which could kind of, when you think about a large lot, you can think of a parking lot as well, right? It's a large space parking lot. We tested gravel, we tested salt, we tested all these different types of materials to see if it would have issues with any of those. The second use case was a warehouse, fairly large warehouse where the traditional sweeper can get into. So we were able to test in there because it's electric. We were able to kind of test it in an enclosed environment, right? Even though it was vented a little bit, we could still test in a closed environment. And the third case was really a sweep on the street on our regular roads here. We selected we mapped out a route, we tested it, and we did overnight, obviously, because we can't be on the streets, with trucks and all these other things. So we kind of scheduled for after hours, and we were able to do that successfully as well. So we had 3 use cases that were pretty successful. Right now, what I'm waiting for is for the final report to really kind of take a look at the data, analyze the data, and see, because I have KPIs that I was hoping to hit for this actual pilot. So I need to kind of dig into the data and see what the data says and see if it's in alignment with what my expectations are, and then go back to my management, talk over the product, and see if we make a decision at that time.
Well, how interesting. And Ignacio, as part of this, I'll put a photo of the Trombia sweeper up so people
Yeah,
can
sure.
see what that is too.
Yeah,
Let's go through your 3 cases from one to the other, and tell me what your anecdotal evidence shows you for each of those. For the lot across the street, you put down a variety of materials.
right.
and I wouldn't mind if you can recall what the other materials are you put down besides the ones.
Well, yeah, in the actual, let's start with the first case, which is a lot. We use salt, we use gravel, we use rocks, we use really just about everything I had, because
How
that's
big
where we
rocks?
actually
You know,
the pebbles are pretty
my
large.
thumb, my
About a marble, yeah, thumb size, maybe a marble, a little larger than marbles,
okay.
different sizes, but
Yeah.
definitely larger than a marble, but smaller than a baseball, right? It wasn't as large as a baseball, but definitely larger than a marble. So we use pebbles, we use rocks, actual rocks, we use salt, things like that, and test it against cans and bottles, and pretty much kind of made a little mess over there. And the good thing is that the Trombia offers so much data that for each use case, the data show different output, right? In terms of the consumption, in terms of how long the battery life lasts, how much battery was actually being consumed, temperature, different things like that. Because out in the light is out in the sun, it's hotter, so it's running hotter, it's doing a lot more, it's working harder. Whereas when it's in the warehouse, is not working as hard. So the battery consumption is less, right? So there was a lot of that kind of information. So in the 2 weeks we were working, the hopper could hold anywhere between 3 and 4,000 pounds, because the actual vehicle weighs about yeah, I would say about 500 and a half thousand pounds, fully loaded, meaning fully weighed down with debris, is closer to 9,000 pounds. So I would say, it could probably hold anywhere between 3 to 4,000 pounds.
Mhm.
In that time, during that 2 week trial, we definitely collected about 6,000 pounds worth of material. And once again, this was everything from water to salt to pebbles to rocks, and pretty much anything I could find in that area, I really threw at it. There was one case where actually I didn't expect the sweeper to be able to work with this, but there was a mound of dirt out there. It wasn't even dirt; it was more like cement that hardened and kind of was there in the middle of the road. And luckily, actually, it was funny because the sweeper obviously took some time, but the sweeper was able to clean it, where I thought we would probably need a jackhammer or something
Wow.
to to work it. Well, they had to switch. They had to switch the brushes, right? They had to go from
Sure. So the
say
heavy.
poly to steel, right? So yeah.
So did you find
So
somebody were you able to find somebody on your team that you could say, could you either change these brushes out from these to these, or that jackhammer over there, we could hook that up for you? And he said, I'll change the brushes. No
they
problem.
prefer to change the brushes. They prefer to change the brushes. It's funny because even the Trombia CEO, which was here for the entire pilot, I was like, "Can we get this?" Yeah, I was pointing at the mound, right? It's not a huge mound, but it's still
Yeah.
a nice size mound that was kind of baked in. It was like this jobs. His reply was, "There jobs for sweepers and there's jobs for jackhammers." To your point, you mentioned jackhammer, right? He was like, "There's jobs for sweepers and the jobs for jackhammer," because he didn't think he could get it off either, and
Yeah.
and they were able to. So we were all surprised. Everyone was surprised. So
Yeah.
it definitely worked harder. So it means the battery spends a lot faster because higher rotations, faster. So it's working a lot harder. When I receive the data, I kind of have to dig into that and analyze the data,
Sure.
because under different conditions, the system or the vehicle is going to operate differently.
And let
In the
me also
warehouse,
ask,
mhm,
how did you know whether salt was picked up or not? I mean, you can kind of
because
see.
it's important. It's very important, because for us here, in the winter, when it comes to snow removal, right? The slightest news of the possibility of a flurry or anything, we typically blanket this place with salt, right? We blanket it, and the conventional sweeper can't clean it. I mean, it tries, but it can't handle particles that small, right? So
Yeah.
the conventional sweeper is a big guy, used to picking up large things. So it was important for me to make certain that if this thing is something we will move forward on, it definitely better be able to work with salt.
Gotta get the salt. And then in terms of dust suppression, what did you see there? My understanding is you're not using
I
the
can't
same
believe it.
water.
All right, I don't want to sound as if I'm selling, right? I'm not doing that, right? Because I'm still in the process of even making my own mind up, right?
Yeah,
This is not by any way me saying yay or nay, right? This is just
of course.
my experience and my reactions. The best use case was the warehouse. The warehouse had dirt at least a half an inch thick, right on the floor. Dust. We're talking about dust. We talking about everything you can think about. Sand. It was we had stuff all over the place, and it went in there, and with the water on because it uses less water than our conventional sweeper.
Right.
They kept telling me, the CEO kept telling me it doesn't produce dust, right? There's no dust build up, blown up. I didn't believe that. I had to see it for myself, right? And believe it or not, I can believe it. There was no dust,
Wow.
no dust at all. I can believe it. And this is, this is, I have no dog in the fight, right? But this
Yeah,
is
right.
me saying I was so surprised because I thought it was totally, not it couldn't be, right? The dusty place, it has to kick up dust. There's no way it's not going to kick up dust, and sure enough, it did.
Uh-huh. That's
So
not
wasn't a surprise.
boy.
Yeah,
Um,
wasn't a surprise.
okay, and did a good job on the dust and pretty thorough
Oh
cleaning
yeah.
thing too. And
Well,
you a little
for
water, but
me,
not like a conventional sweeper.
I'm sorry. Come again.
And you used a little bit of water, but not like
They
a
use
conventional sweeper.
not. Yeah. I think when we originally talked and when I originally read the specs, I think it'll use 5% of what a traditional sweeper uses, right? But that's subjective, right? Because
Sure.
depending on the size of this, all these other things.
But I'll tell you,
So
Ignacio, one of the things that I've long discussed and tried to talk to the EPA and other places about, and now water quality is getting to be a big issue. And conventional sweepers are out there taking perfectly good potable drinking water, and by the hundreds of thousands of gallons a day, I would anticipate, and turning it into let's call it a PM10 slurry, and carting it
yeah,
off to a landfill someplace, and that can't continue.
absolutely right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and for us, it's even a bigger concern because one of something else I was looking at is a sweeper like this to clean out berths, right? The berths are where the vessels kind of park, right? The berth, you know what berth, is, right?
Yeah.
And for us, the important thing is to make certain that we don't pollute the water,
Yeah.
right? By allowing this water to get into the supply. So that was important for us. So the fact that it doesn't kick up dust, it doesn't kind of have all this water run off, it was a big deal. I mean, there is water, obviously, because the brushes are turning and it's releasing water, but you don't have this huge runoff that you typically see with traditional sweepers.
Okay.
So that was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And finally the last one was just regular. It was in the street. I wanted to test. I could operate within the port because we have rail tracks, we have all these different road conditions, and I wanted to see how I was going to be able to maneuver those obstacles. I did pretty well. I do have to admit it seemed really small on my roads, right? Because it has such a small profile.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it worked, right? It definitely worked on the road. But it was in the middle of the night, so I was trying to tape it, but you couldn't really, I would have to come in on I would have had to come in on Saturday or some during the day to really be able to see how well it did.
Uh-huh.
I think it did fairly well, but I'm sorry, pardon me. I think it did fairly well, but there was nothing I could, I can't really see the
Sure.
yeah, I can't really
And
see
I
it.
don't know what the sweeping width is on this. Um, is it much less than a traditional street sweeper, which is normal vehicle width?
It's funny you asked that because it has multiple rotations, right? In terms of RPMs, depending on how much it needs to work, right? Let's say, for instance, if it has enough battery life and, it's just starting out the job, the RPMs could be as much, 100% right? Whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I could forward that information to you, or I could look it up. But what I'm trying, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it's a range, right? Where it can operate. Let's just call it high, medium, and low, right? And depending on the how much consumption it needs from the battery. Let's say, for instance, it needs more consumption than the battery has in terms of how much electricity it has left. It could adjust itself to accommodate for that consumption, right? So if the battery is down to 10%, but yet it needs 20% worth of battery to make it run, right? At 100%, it could kind of lower that RPM to kind of match what it has in terms of battery life. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The fact that it could adjust itself based on the need on its current needs,
And
which
the
is
reason you
something.
found that interesting is because you are the manager of technology development, and that's pretty slick technology.
It is slick. It's not something you could. The RPMs are what the RPMs are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the fact that is smart enough, or it knows based on the needs, it makes adjustments, right? And so I found that very interesting. Maybe that's the tech in me. I'm interested in stuff like that, but
Yeah, I
it's good
think
to
so
know.
too. Yeah, I have.
It's good to know to make decisions like that on the zone to not only safeguard the technology, but being able to get a job done with less, spending less, right? So
Well, and
it
so
was good.
nobody calls you in the middle of the night and says you got to tow this thing back to the base.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. It needs to know how much it needs to get back, right, to the storage station.
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If you got to stop the job and go back, it'll do that, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's important to know
But it
that.
needs to do that, of course. And how do you geofence it to tell it what to do and where it can be and can't be? You want it along the berth of one of your ship berths, but you don't really want it where the ship would be if it was in port.
Right. That's handled through the mapping. You're pretty much creating zones, right?
Uh-huh.
For lack of a. So you take an area, call it Area A, Zone A. You map it out. You just with the actual vehicle, you actually drive that route,
Yeah, okay.
marking the area you want,
Mhm.
and once you mark it, then you teach it. So it's a two-step process, right? You mark out the area, and then you go in and teach it how to sweep that area, right? So you map it, and then you teach how to sweep it. You save it, save that zone, and you never have to worry about that zone again unless the zone changes physically, right? So
Mhm. I saw a great video of that of what tractor drivers in farming are doing now with autonomous tractors,
yeah,
and it's basically the same kind of technique.
it's setting
Now,
up zones. Yeah, you're
yeah,
setting
you
up
set up
zones.
zones. Uh,
Exactly.
then that keeps it, from tipping off into the water, or I mean, it can't go there
Well,
because you told it not to go there.
exactly.
So
If it doesn't know, if that wasn't part of the original mapping, it's not going to go there,
yeah,
which is good,
right.
right?
So you got to have a
Unless
driver
the
that
footprint
doesn't go
changes,
there either. So
right? If the footprint, yeah, right. If the footprint changes, well, my traditional driver can get in there anyway, right?
yeah,
With the big cleaner. So unless the footprint changes where somehow it contracts or something, then
sure.
I probably still think the old mapping is there. But it's smart enough to kind of be able to figure some of the. It can't make any major decisions on its own, but it could definitely the few decisions it can make, it definitely makes them well, especially when it comes to stopping before vehicles, stopping before people, stopping me,
Sure.
like water, a pothole. It would know if the pothole is too deep, it won't go through that pothole. But if it's shallow, it'll go through it, right?
So
So,
does it know that it needs to step up its power consumption because that pile is deeper than what it's been doing?
well, that's well that well we did that, so it should show in the data.
Okay.
Currently, I don't know because I haven't seen the data. I looked at it, a very small sample, which is not telling me the entire picture. So I have to wait to receive the data and analyze it. But that's a good question because it changes.
Yeah, yeah. And then what is the process for when the mapping is done? Because does the sweeper have a control panel on it? Or
Yes.
can it get a rider?
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, yeah. There's three ways to operate the vehicle. One is through remote control, right? You're sitting in the office and you're driving in the office and the sweeper is down at the berth or at the parking lot or whatever the case is. And you can map it that way, right? You don't have to be in the area. The other one is, as you mentioned, the remote control, but you have to be there. If you have the remote control, you have to be within, I think, within 350 feet, 400 feet of the vehicle.
Easy,
So
yeah.
you have to be in the area. And 400 feet is pretty good for a remote
Yes,
control,
yeah.
a radio remote control. So that's really excellent, actually. And the other is autonomous, right? You let it go. You map it, you teach how to sweep, and you let it go, right? And you just send it to zone B, so zone A, zone B, zone C, and when it needs to, and it's smart enough that it obviously through sensors and IoT and all these things, it knows that okay, I need to empty, so it knows to go back to the service station by itself. It could, be lift up in the ramp and drop his cargo and then go right back to work without any intervention.
Yeah, and so let's get rid of the debris. We picked up some debris. What happens with that? I'm sure
You
they
need
take it to
a
your
container.
house and put it in the front yard, but
No, 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 no. Yeah, no. You need a container. You need a dumping ground, right? You need
okay.
to dump it, which is a container. What we were using the actual the service station they brought over for the pilot was what they call a mobile service station. So in that mobile service station, you had a built-in container, large
Okay.
container. Well, not very large, but large enough where you could hold 3,000 pounds in it, right? So it was large enough.
And how high?
So
How high can it dump into a container? I know that's got to be on
uh,
specs, of course, but
No, no. In that particular mobile, in that particular mobile service station, you needed well in terms of dumping, it actually goes up the ramp and opens up
slice it. Okay, and
the
it just dumps down into
beneath it.
it.
No, no, beneath it. It goes up above it
Oh, I
and
see.
opens up and drops its cargo.
Okay,
Um,
out
and
the
then it
bottom.
just closes it. Yeah. And it washes and does whatever it needs to do, and then it just backs out and keeps going.
Yeah.
So this one was the service station we had wasn't as advanced as what the actual service station they're selling, which does a lot more than this. This was very manual.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't very automated or advanced.
Yeah. And it never wants a coffee break. Um, that's got to be in there someplace too, day and night. And in terms of operation, we're working for however many hours it can go, 6 8 hours,
Well, it
less.
takes well the good thing is it only takes about yeah, the good thing is it only takes about 4.5 hours to 5 hours or 5.5 hours to charge, depending
Okay,
on where it's at in
yeah,
terms of how much battery life it has left. In terms of if it's totally set on autonomous, it could go probably 5 hours, maybe 6 hours of fully autonomous, full time, ongoing, right?
okay.
Radio, and depending on the use case, it will change, right? The consumption because the battery life changes based on remote control versus this thing running on its own,
Yeah.
right? So depending, it could adjust to consumption or how much is using based on because in order for the sweeper to clean, it doesn't need to I'm sorry, it doesn't need to be running with the brushes, right? The brushes are when you're for street application things like that.
Mhm.
When it's in a warehouse or plant, for the most case, it has brushes on the underbelly, which could be used to clean as well.
Okay.
So if it's running out of battery, running out of juice, it could shut the brushes down and just use the brushes underneath the belly. So,
Let's see.
which
Okay.
I think was pretty interesting.
And I want to point out, and I'm not selling this machine either, but in terms of the width, by far the majority on any curved street, the majority of the debris is going to be within the first 3 feet
Right.
about of the curb, because that's what happens is the wind or the water or whatever.
Everything, right, concrete. I've never ran a sweeper before, but based on my research, you're absolutely right. Kind of goes to a certain area. all the time.
You can
And
do 4 feet at the edge of the curve of the road, then you're going to be in pretty good shape relatively. You can always make another pass if you wanted, of course, but
right, which you can, right, which you certainly can.
yeah.
This thing at this particular, if we were able to use it, and once again, we're also limited by law, right? We're not sure where New Jersey is going with AV. We know there's a lot of other states already making headway into AV. 7 states are already allowing it. You don't even need a license to operate it. So we have to see what New Jersey says, right? We know that Trombia will not, the production is not online until 2024. So we have until 2024 to decide, well, we want to place an order before then if that's what we want to do. But I don't think they're shipping until 2024, at least based on what Auntie said, told me. I don't think they ship until
And
2024.
he's talking about Antti Nikanen, who's the CEO of Trombia.
Trombia, correct, yes.
Yeah, and so you could even lobby your use case ahead of time for the streets around your facilities. But
Right.
an advantage certainly is that if you have enough of your port facilities that don't involve streets, then you can keep it busy.
We have a case. We definitely have a case, and even some of the streets, it's a little weird here because some of the streets are private and some are not, right? So on the private, we could run, right? But on the public, maybe not, right? Because based on whatever New Jersey decides to do with AV, I'm not even sure New Jersey's looking at AV right now, but the rest of the country is. At least I think 34 states are looking at it, right?
Well,
So
you may be the use case scenario that pushes them to do that too.
yeah, well, we got a lot of coverage for it, a lot of media coverage. So hopefully someone in in government in New Jersey was looking at it and start thinking about it.
You're such an optimist. I like that in you.
Well, you have to be, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna gain anything for being
let's
negative
assume the government officials are paying attention. Why not?
yeah, why not?
They proved
Why
it.
not? Why not? We had a great showing, So thanks to Amanda, we had a great showing with the press here. So
Yeah.
maybe somebody saw it and starts thinking about it. So
Yeah. And she did do a great job. And for listeners, we have a lurker, which is Amanda Kwan, who's handled the media outreach for this and has been my contact, and she just wants to make sure we're actually doing this instead of saying we did and not doing it, probably for both of us, Ignacio and myself. What other questions you think need to be asked or answered here, Ignacio? I don't want to leave anything on the table you're more familiar with it than I am.
Well, I mean, the first thing that comes to me, which I don't have the answer, and would be the cost, right? I mean, are we going to really save cost? Are we going to save anything from going this route, right? And when I first looked at this, besides the barbed wire and the old sweeper, it was, can I save anything on this, right? Whether it is through longer running hours, right? The fact that we could run these overnight, run them on weekends, which we didn't have the ability to do that before. Are we saving anything? We're definitely going to save on fossil fuel, right? We're not spending on diesel. And we see some cost savings in water. And another thing is, once again, I want to go back to that carbon footprint, right? Are we really reducing the carbon footprint? And based on the numbers, we would. For every 6 miles of cleaning, we're saving X of carbon, right? We reduce our carbon by X, right? So we know those numbers, and we really are saving on carbon.
Yeah.
Over the long run, does it make a dent? I don't know.
Yeah, and there's publicity factor there too, where you're showing that you are listening to the environmental issues and you're in the leading forefront of trying to figure this out and how to reduce the carbon footprint we all need to reduce.
Yeah, we definitely a big believer. We're definitely invested in reducing our carbon footprint. The port department is in port master plan of reducing, by a certain number by 2030, reducing possibly close to net zero by 2050. So it's something we're committed to, and it's not just the port department; it's the port authority as a whole. We're very committed to this initiative, and it's something that it goes out throughout the entire port. You can speak to anyone in any department in the port authority, and they'll tell you that we're behind, you know, reducing our carbon footprint. Anyone mention that?
Yeah, I think the world is certainly behind. An argument could be made. What do you do with any kind of a backup sweeper? Did you have a backup sweeper pre-barbed wire?
No,
So
no,
if that
no, and
sweeper
that's why I'm
that's
suffering.
always a concern to me is sweepers break so easily, and
Yeah,
what happens is especially when you're at a port, does all that material now just go into the waterways and until your sweeper gets fixed, or what happens? So
yeah. Luckily for us, by the time we go with in 2024, if we decided to move forward with a sweeper, we know that this on the East Coast, this a Trombia presence, right, for
yeah,
maintenance and support, right. So repairs is local to us. So the fact that it's local means that we're going to save time. If something breaks down, we could get the part, get it replaced fairly quickly,
sure.
right. So it's not so much of a concern, right? If the parts were coming from, if the parts and the engineer was coming from Finland, then that would probably be a problem for us,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
sure.
who
And
knows when we're going to receive.
make sure you set up your protocols, and then make sure they're followed. I've traveled around the world to around 20 countries and talk sweeping, and one of them that really stuck out to me was Amsterdam, because they
Oh,
were
really?
talking about their canals and how they're really working to clean up.
Yeah. You can't mess with their canals for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
and so what the director proudly told me, and this is online under our country section at World Sweeper, but he proudly told me that they decided to make sure this would happen, is they had a guy with a broom that would be ahead of the sweeper whenever it was operating at the canal, at the edge of the canal, which I thought that's great, and commended him on that.
That's
So
commitment. That's
yeah, then I
commitment.
went out to
He
see.
bought in. He bought in. He
Yeah,
bought
he
into the
bought
dream for sure.
it.
Right?
But when I went out there to the edge of the canal, I saw that the guy was out there in front of the sweeper and right at the edge of the canal. And here's how he was sweeping.
He swooped into the canal. Yeah.
Every other sweep went into the canal.
Yeah.
So
His heart is in the right place, but he's
that's
yeah,
it.
I
A
think somebody should
training,
stop and
lack of
explain to
training
him.
there someplace. And
Yeah.
that's another advantage that I would say too, with not having an operator, is that if you have somebody that really is dedicated to training this correctly, you're not going to change operators because that guy's sick, and now you've got a dump truck guy that knows how to run a sweeper, but doesn't really, and his protocols are wrong, and he's going to leave a lot of material, or whatever.
Well,
I like
one of the big one of the big selling points for me is I brought out the our sweeper, right? I spent time with our current operator. I wanted him to take a look at the technology because I wanted to get his input. Because anytime you talk about automation or whatever, right? People are always concerned. So I
absolutely.
wanted to bring him out and let him know that this is a tool for you, right? So is only a tool, is not anything else, is a tool for him to use. He could be in the conventional sweeper down this big street here, and he can send a small one to birth wherever. And now your production's gone up, right? Because now you got two places versus one, right? So I just wanted to make it clear to him that this was me trying to work with him and trying to increase production, lower costs, and all these things with him in mind, right? So this is a partnership of technology and human. Is what is I guess what I'm trying to get at,
Yeah.
right? It's a combination.
Okay, and
So
should we talk about what the current price is, or ballpark of price? That seems to make sense. to do that, but it's a
there was a number I read in the.
report plus, so it's kind of nebulous. Maybe we shouldn't touch that.
I don't want to even touch it because the range is. I've read a number in one of the reports that came out of our media event, and that number just didn't seem right to me. I don't want to repeat it here.
Okay.
Because it seemed out of whack. It didn't seem like a real number, so
Yeah,
I don't want to.
Yeah,
call the company. I don't want to
something.
give fake information, right? So
yeah,
call the company
because
my number will probably not be your number, right? So I don't want to get into that.
Okay.
Right.
What else should we say about this? Is it for one,
successful? It was a successful pilot.
Yeah.
And now the work begins, right? I have to wait for the data, and really go through the data, all of it, to see on the different scenarios, to see what the data shows and see if it really makes sense, right? Because based on, like we said, based on consumption, based on water usage, based on all these other KPIs I'm collecting, I want to make sure that yes, there's a cost saving. Yes, we could double our production or whatever that is, right? I want to make sure it fits with what we're trying to accomplish here.
Well, I would certainly anticipate that we'll have a get back together meeting, and when you get that,
I have to look at the data. I have to look at the data.
But I'll tell you that for about 10 years, I was essentially, directing the marketing when the Schwartz family had Schwartz Industries, what is now a public company, Schwartz Industries Incorporated. So I went to a lot of demonstrations that involved, whoever was in the contest for sweeping, and
Right.
and one of the things you're saying here, I want to put a punctuation mark next to it, which is that that there's data that you're waiting for, and in most of those sweeper tests, the city would put down more material than any sweeper could be expected to pick up, and see how much it left. Let's put down 8 inches
data that's real
sand, blah blah blah, and then and they take pictures and kind of compare the pictures. But I really appreciate the fact that you have some solid data that not only
data that's real data.
Data, and as a technology guy, you've got to like that too.
That's like, with data, let's not even talk about machine learning and AI or all the other things we can do with data, right?
Yeah, that's right.
It can really tell us a story, and a story we weren't able to see before. Now we can, right? At least partially, because we're still using the conventional, right? So
the conventional sweepers, when you go back to that, you also had a more or less trained demo driver from the factory who was a salesperson for the regional service center, who came out and ran this sweeper. And this is a lot more solid, I think, too.
Data, you can't, data. I'd rather have data than a salesperson talk to me any day.
Absolutely.
Right? Send me the data, and then we'll talk after I look at the data. So we'll get we'll have a final report in the next week or two. Once I receive it, I'll go through the data, take a look at it, see if it matches up to the promise, right?
Yeah.
And then if it makes sense, then I go back and sell it to my own management and see where we go from there.
Right. Or sell them against it, or sell the data, explain the data.
The data sells itself, right? You have to explain it, make sure they understand what we're saying. We know what the major objection, the objective is. Okay, can we save money? Are we reduce our carbon? We're doing those things, right? But at the same time, can we also do these other things, right? So as long as we can make that case, it pretty much sells itself.
Yeah. Well, that's I think we're probably done. Would you if there's any question you'd like me to ask or you'd like to answer? And
I don't have any.
All right. Nice job.
There's a lot of information here, right? There's a lot of. I spent an hour or two with you, so I think we covered all the important things for now.
That's it.
Go always follow up if you like, but I think we covered a lot today.
All right. Well, and thank you. And you are. Let me say, I've talked to a lot of people about sweepers and sweeping, and you definitely come across as a credit to your organization that you're working for. So,
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate
take 3 attaboys out of
it.
cash
I
and get the
appreciate it.
rest of the day off with pay or something.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We've been
Yeah, it's
talking.
all about the data. That's
Yeah,
why they sent me. It's about the data. It's about the tech and the data. That's why they sent me.
we've been
But
talking with Ignacio McVeach, and he is the manager of technology development for the New Jersey Marine Terminals of the Port Authority of New Jersey and New York, which is a great title and certainly an expansive place. And I'm sure you did a lot to earn that title. And clearly, they picked a good man for the job. So thanks for your
thank you.
very capable explanation of new technology. And I look forward to having the next part of the video that talks about what your decision is and what drove your decision making, whatever that is. And
Sure.
the positives are the positives that show the pluses of it. The minuses might be the things that Trombia goes back and looks at
No,
again.
it's never perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's never
So there we have it. All right. Thanks so much.
awesome.
All right.
Ranger, it's a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Be well.
Bye.
Take care.